Hello everyone, we're working in Photoshop CS4 and this is a tutorial on doing a gradient map inside or masked by a certain selection. So let's get started. I have a picture of the Ben Franklin Bridge here in Philadelphia up on the screen, and what I would like to do first, as we always do, is unlock our layer and say OK, and let's make a duplicate by hitting Command J. Turn off our background layer. Now the first thing we have to do, if you've ever worked with gradients before, if you've seen some of the other tutorials, we could just launch a gradient map by going down here and selecting gradient. But what we want to do in this situation is create an actual mask where the gradient will exist. And that would mean that part of the photo is not subject to the gradient and part of the photo is being revealed and the gradient is visible there. So what I'd like to do is come up to our selection tool and we're going to select the sky. So if I hit color range and say yes, we get a picture up of our bridge and sky scene, and if I move this slider around we can start to see what the mask might be like. Make sure you have one of your droppers selected and come over the picture and click around in the blue area. I'll click here and you can see it selected some sky. I'm going to add to this selection because I can tell that we didn't quite catch enough sky in the upper darker corners and maybe in and around the lighter areas right here around the bridge. So hit the dropper that has plus on it. That will allow you to add to your selection. I'm going to click once up here. It changed a little bit. I'm going to click over here, being careful not to click on any white because I'm not trying to select any clouds. I'm just trying to select the blue. I'm going to click down here where it's a light blue. And you can see what we have is a nice preview of where this mask will be appearing. The white, again, is the reveal, the blackened clouds and the bridge structure, and the foreground will be blocked out because they are in black. Let's see if we can get this right around there where the bridge goes black, move our slider so the clouds are black. Okay, let's work with this selection and see what happens. So let's say OK. I have my selection up now. I have my marching ants, which are indicating the selection. It's waiting for me to choose to do something. Let's load our gradient map. I'm going to come down here to the bottom and hit gradient map. Automatically you can see that we've launched a gradient map with the last one that we used or one that might have been set. And we're not going to use this one. We're going to go and click once into the gradient editor. And what I want to show you is up on this top row, you have, if you hover over it, it will tell you what each gradient is. This is foreground to background, which is indicating the foreground to the background. This is foreground to transparent. You can see that grid beneath it. I'm going to click because what I would like this gradient to do is run from having a color into fading out into having no color or the background. So if I hover over it again, it tells you what it is, which is foreground to transparent. Click that. It automatically loads this blue that was previously sitting there. Well, that's a nice blue, but I'm not really happy with it. I'd like to really play further with this. So let's do that by going into the color stop that is blue, double-clicking, and moving our selection to something in the realm that is a little more cyan, a little more blue. We're going to really punch this sky in an interesting way and then be able to dial it back with our slider. Find a color that's in and around here. The value that I'm going to choose right now is somewhere between this pale blue and starting to get into these Mediterranean blues. The CMYK value is over here. The RGB value, let's say, is about 14. Actually, go back to that. Let's say 18, 183, and 287 that you can see here. Let's say OK to that. And let's also work with our slider here in the middle, judging by the looks of things. I want to move that a little bit, I want to move that slider a little bit like to the left towards the blue so there's not as much of it infiltrating the photo. You can hang on to your slider, it's a little tricky, and move it over. That looks good to me. Let's say OK. We have our selection. It looks really, really punchy and bright, but that can be changed by using a different blend mode. So let's choose a blend mode of screen is a little bit punchy, we have overlay, we have soft light. Soft light looks okay to me. we could also drop down and try color. Let's stick with, I think color is kind of funny because it's surreal and it's really, really punchy in there. So you essentially have launched a mask with your selection, and we put our gradient inside of it. We're choosing the blend mode in this instance of color, and we can drop back the opacity of that and the strength really of that cyan. If I move my slider all the way to the left, well, we've done nothing. We've taken the gradient right out of the picture. If I move that slider up way beyond the 70 point or 65 point, we have an interesting sky that has taken on a real surreal kind of cyan cast. Again, the visibility can be turned on and off. Suppose you like the overall look of that sky and you like the way it got masked in, but the overall saturation of the picture is still too much for you. What we can do is drop down, and you can always add another layer. Let's go to the layers adjustment and launch a hue and saturation layer, which has no mask. In other words, it has an open mask, so whatever we do here will affect the entire picture because white reveals the adjustment. Let's drop that slider down a little bit, and you can see what's happening is the entire picture is losing its saturation, but we've maintained some of that look of the sky that came from the gradient mask. I like this area right around here. Let's go and click down here to close that. There's before, there's after. Let's turn on the bottommost layer and use our trick again of previewing the before and after. Hold down your Option key, click on the eye once, it turns it off and shows you where we started. Click on that eye again while you're holding the Option key and it launches the adjustment. There we are, we have effectively put a gradient map into a sky. We made a selection of the sky and we mapped our gradient into it, and this can be changed over and over again by going into the gradient itself and picking another set of colors to keep updating and changing this gradient however you like. And you can try them here by moving around. A lot of flexibility here. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and tune in again or watch it again if you didn't quite get it. It takes a little bit to sink in, but there's a lot of versatility here working with gradient maps, especially if you are using a specified color selection to map your gradient into like we did in this tutorial. Hope you enjoyed watching and enjoy playing around on Photoshop. We'll see you again.